See how black this is from that exhaust leak. It's been there for so long. These things have probably been broke for a while. The idea to slide these Burgman smaller tubes inside the Maddog tube, that's a good idea. It's a great way to mount this thing, but you should use a tape measure at least when you do something like this. I don't know if you can tell, but it's clearly not straight. It's stuffed in on that side way more than this side. I'm going to break those welds and see if I can get them to slide again and straighten that. The neck is actually straight. This and this are straight. There's no bend in it. It's a solid Maddog frame. I just need to set it in the Burgman frame straight. I think I have the frame sorted out. Did away with that cross brace back here. The engine swing arm mounts between here, and it's pretty substantial, so I think that's plenty of strength. I think that cross brace was mainly just to hold the rear bags and the passenger on the big Burgman. So I got the head straight. The issue was, if you look at a Maddog, the gooseneck comes down, the two sides are equal distance, apparently on both sides, and then goes back to the rear like that. The assumption is, and I made the same assumption, that the Burgman was also that way. But if you look, the Burgman bottom frame is not centered with the top frame. That was what was causing the guy's issue, trying to get those two frames centered together. So if you look at the bottom, you see how it's offset over here. This whole thing is offset from the Maddog frame, because the Maddog frame is centered with the neck, but the Burgman frame is not centered with the bike. That was the issue. I redid the tube-in-tube welds down here. I had to go ahead and cut them out and pull it apart to get it reset proper. So now the bike should run straight. It looks weird with the back end over. I drew a ton of chalk lines on the driveway, and that's what it said. That bottom part is not straight with the top part. Made offset pads on it to bring that bottom frame over. My collection of unwanted toys. The next step is to put everything back together. Just rough assemble it. Put the engine back in, figure out what I need to weld on. I know I need to weld on tabs for the foot pegs, something for the tail light. I didn't cut this off because I think that might be part of the center stand. This is part of the center stand, so I don't know on that yet. I've got to weld on a mount for the radiator and try to figure out where that's going to go. Got the City Grip 120 by 70 by 12 for the front, for rear or front applications. On the orientation, it shows rear going this way, and that looks correct. Looks like it's supposed to look. What's odd is it shows the front orientation going that way. So that means we're rolling down the street like this, and the tread looks completely backwards to me. Yeah, it turns out I put my Gen 5 front tire on backwards. The orientation marks, it says front, going the opposite way, but it just looks stupid to me, so I'm gonna run them like this. DOT tires require groove to shed water, and that's all they're for. If this was a regular tire, it would be like a racing slick. All you see is these little dots in it, the little dimples, so you know how far the tire tread goes down until you need to replace your tire. But it would be a slick. So the groove orientation actually does not matter unless it rains. I don't really ride in the rain that much, so I'm gonna run it where it looks cool. In the Michelin City Grip 140 by 60, 13 in the back. So the 140 fit with tons of clearance. I could have put a 150 in there, but you end up with a tire that's too round, too pointy on top. Doesn't handle that well. Falls over in the turns really quick. 140 is one size bigger. The Burgman 400 calls for a 130 by 13. So yeah, no cool wide tire looks, but it's gonna handle well and be fast. I've got my weld-on foot peg mounts. Seems like they're a pretty standard fit, so I can... Well, this is cool. So I ordered this $22 carburetor from AliExpress. Maybe Japan is outsourcing their stuff too, because it's Sudco. That's a big brand in the 90s, especially for racing, but it says Kian on it. A real Kian carburetor. It's even got the little blue inspection mark on it. Looks like the real deal. 22 bucks. What the hell? That's a $200 to $400 carburetor. Yeah, it looks like a pretty genuine part. It says made in Japan. The little tag inside says made in Japan. Thinking this carburetor is going to be an issue. You can see the seat's supposed to go here. It sticks way up here. Of course, I've got it out too far. I've got a shorter one of these coming. I can get it close to that as I can, but this cable sticks up so high, so I've got this thing from AliExpress. I thought it was junk in one of my videos because when I pulled it apart, it didn't have this piece with it. Well, it turns out that piece was hidden inside this rubber piece. So I found the other piece, We're gonna see if that works on this carburetor. So that's gonna work good to keep the cable from sticking up into my back. Problem with these angle things is this is way too long. It's much longer than this. So it takes up a lot of cable and you end up with a cable that barely comes out like that. Not enough to get onto your throttle. Once I get the cable length I need, I'll see if I have enough cable sticking out. If I don't, I'll have to shorten. You have to kind of cut that carefully away and make it shorter. You get more cable sticking out. So here's my plan to simplify the wiring harness down to the basics. Looks like that plan the guy drew in Deadpool to catch the bad guy. So my idea is, instead of building my own wiring harness, I'll use the one they have. All the wires are there. I'll just reduce it down to just what I need. Horn, rear brake light, stator, tail lights, blinkers, coil, dripping it down to the bare minimum. And all this trash in there. Got a bunch of crap over here. That way I can use the Burgman fuse box, the Burgman relay, the Burgman wires, and then some of these plug-ins that plug into like the rectifier, stator, and things like that. It'll already be done. I won't have to splice stuff in. Sitting that low right there, I think would really look cool. Get it real low. I can lengthen these dog bones right here and lower the bike and still keep full suspension travel. This is the suspension fully unloaded. I'm gonna make sure we're not gonna bang into the ground. With the rear suspension bottomed, so we have 2 1/4 of travel. We'll call it 2 1/2 just to be safe. All right, that's how I want the back to look when it's bottomed out. I have to lengthen this dog bone by that much to lower this bike. And the suspension's all the way at the bottom, so it'll work out good. The other thing lowering the bike's gonna do is it's gonna solve this carburetor clearance issue. It's gonna lower the carb down to a lower spot. Even being this low, I don't think I'll hit hard parts till pretty far over. The contact point there. Right turns would be right to there. So that's how it's going to sit. Nice and low. It's going to be slammed. 1/2 inch longer dog bone in there. That's what lowered it. Should be able to still have good suspension without hitting the ground. It looks pretty good with that front end slammed way down like that. I don't know if that's even realistic though. Rear brake line's routed. It's going to go up here to a pressure switch, which will be right about where the tail lights and all are going to mount. And it looks like lowering the bike also solved my carburetor issues. You can see the seat's going to clear it now. Welded the mount on for the license plate, something like that. This right here will go here. The license plate will cover that up. Then I'll have the tail light and got the blinkers here. I'm just spot welding everything. I don't want to burn holes all in my stuff. I got the Maddog seat in. I'm able to see where I want my foot pegs now. They're kind of low, but my legs don't bend very good. Got some orthopedic injuries from lots of motocross races. I welded tabs on for the regulator, battery, relay, CDI. Once I pull it all apart again, I'll weld that stuff good. So I got these forks off AliExpress. Have a roller now. It sits way too high in the front. It's on the center stand. When it's setting down on the wheel, it's really too high. I'll probably take spacers or springs out of the forks. I just have to see how much clearance I have. These things don't usually have a lot of travel, maybe 40 millimeters, you know, about like that. I should be good to go to not hit the wheel on here. I mean, it shouldn't have that much travel, which is usually going to hit before the top of that hits. We have to limit the travel on it if I lower it down. It was 175 millimeters between here, center to center. I didn't know what that meant, but it's pretty damn narrow. So I may have to center the wheel and then space the disc brake out. But now I can at least order the disc brake, so I know what kind of spacing I got on the fork here. And it was made for a dual disc front, but I'm not going to do that. There are a lot of axles sticking out. You can put spacers on these axles, and then to hide them you can put them underneath there, so you'll have spacers inside there. Well, these forks have a lot of travel. 82 millimeters of travel. These forks must be designed for a 10-inch front wheel. Of course we have that issue. Anyone know what size of wrench that is? Every once in a while something works. I got this Harbor Freight tool here to take my grinding wheel off, and it fits right in there. It's made for it. Let's see what breaks first. Now, just as suspected, the tool broke first. I have to get on there with some kind of pipe wrench and completely destroy them. But if they're cheap Chinese forks, they're not using a damper rod, they're not using a slider, you can actually pull them apart from the bottom, separate them. A good set of forks uses a bushing from side to side play like this. But these little Chinese forks actually use the seal, which is a crappy method. Now I've got bigger problems. I've got a spinning bolt. I can't get inside there to hold it. Trash the top of that one trying to get it off. No way to get this frickin' bolt tight. I thought, well, this thing has to come off, right? So I'll try to access the fork through here. Looks like I'm getting it to come off. There's where I started my two lines. So I'm gonna try to take this lower part off. Guess I broke that valve stem off. Ever have one of those days where nothing goes right? Oil should stay in the bottom, the spring shouldn't pop too much. There it is. Good. There's your seal, it stayed in. There's no bushings or sliders. That seal is holding your shit from wobbling, which is pretty lame, but that's China. Without getting this cap off, I still can't get the spring and the spacers out. Pointless. I might as well tighten this back up and just live with this travel. Try to replace this oil I lost. Now I can hold this tube and I can tighten that bolt. I just have to live with this travel. I could spin the forks around, increase the trail, I guess, and that would bring my tire away. I hate having the brakes on the front though, it looks dorky. Note to self, in the future, if you see this kind of bullshit here, yeah, it looks really cool. Don't buy it unless it has a nut on the top of it that you can put a wrench on. Here's my travel-o-meter right here. So that's how much travel I have. Oh, we won't quite hit that. Look at there. That clears if the forks are no further up than that. The issue is, so it's gonna hit the frame for sure. So I could run the axle in front. I would have clearance here and clearance here. I would have to have the brake on the front of the bike and look like a dork. That's about it for updates till I get some new parts in for the Chuckus. I think I'm stuck running the forks right about there. So we'll see how level it sits. I need it lowered so that carburetor clears.